to our leader of the CBC, Congressman Butterfield, thank you so much for your exemplary leadership and the courage that you exemplify every day in fighting for the causes that we all hold so dear. I want to thank Congresswoman Lee for those wonderful words. Sheila Jackson Lee has not only been an amazing member of Congress, but she's been a great mentor to me, and I want to thank you for all that you do for so many of us and the mentoring that you continue to provide the younger generation. So thank you for that. What can I say to Charlie Rangel? Even have you know my name is an honor. I know that but for the remarkable lives of the three people that we celebrate, their lives and their legacy today, that I would not be in this auspicious chamber. And but for your leadership and your courage, I would not know how to behave in this chamber. So I thank you, sir, for continuing to serve the great people of Harlem and New York, but also the great people of America, black, white, green, yellow, all of us. You do such a great job. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to join with my CBC colleagues in paying tribute to the life and legacies of three great giants in American history: Representative Louis Stokes, Amelia Boynton Robinson, and Julian Bond. Our nation collectively mourns the loss of each of these trailblazing figures who departed from us way too soon this summer. Their journeys paved the way for myself and so many others serving in this august body. While our hearts are heavy today, we honor them for their historic and notable contributions to this nation. Congressman Louis Stokes was the first African American to represent the state of Ohio in Congress, where he served for more than 30 years. He rose to prominence by breaking numerous barriers as the first in so many areas. This included being named the first African American to serve as chairman of the prestigious House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. As an African American who now sits on that committee, I am deeply honored to follow in Louis Stokes' footsteps. During his tenure on the Intelligence Committee, he stepped into the national spotlight as a vocal critic of the Reagan administration's foreign policy. He spoke boldly on issues of national security and created a legacy of being a fierce advocate for the homeland. In honoring his memory, we must also commit ourselves collectively to continue the fight to promote diversity within the intelligence community. We must also be committed to supporting policies that promote our national security in face of growing threats. It was Congressman Lou Stokes who taught us that our nation deserves nothing less. Today, we also honor an American treasure and one of my personal heroes, the courageous Mrs. Amelia Boynton Robinson. Ms. Robinson passed away on August 26, 2015, at the age of 110. Yes, 110, Mr. Speaker. Miss Amelia Boynton Robinson was a key figure in the voting rights movement in Selma, Alabama, and she is often remembered for her critical role in Bloody Sunday. On that solemn day on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Robinson was savagely beaten, and a photo of her taken shortly after she was attacked and posted in the New York Times became a powerful symbol of the injustices suffered by those who were attempting simply to vote. Yet this tireless, fearless foot soldier continued her work as a leader on the front lines of securing the right to vote for all Americans. Amelia is best patriarch of the voting rights movement. And it was her courage, along with John Lewis and so many other known and unknown foot soldiers, which led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Amelia was such an integral part of the process that the contents of the bill, the Voting Rights Bill, were drafted on her kitchen table in Selma, Alabama in 1965. And Ms. Boynton not only trailed blazes as a voting rights advocate, she put her money where her mouth was, and she herself ran for Congress. On May 5th, 1964, Amelia Boynton broke yet another barrier when she became the first woman in the state of Alabama and the first African-American woman in the state of Alabama to run for Congress. In 1964, she garnered 10.7% of the vote during a time when very few blacks were registered to vote. Actually, only 1% of the registered voters were African Americans at that time. Her historic run further solidated her impact on the movement for human rights and voting rights in Alabama and in this nation. Without her courageous campaign for the 7th Congressional District of Alabama in 1964, I know that my election to the seat in 2010 some 50 years later would not have been possible. Her sacrifices paved the way for me to walk the halls of Congress, and I will carry my love and admiration for her in my heart each and every day, for I get to do what she could not, and that is vote on behalf of the members of the 7th Congressional District of Alabama, and for that I'm eternally grateful. In fact, one of my most memorable moments in this chamber will be the night that she served as my special guest at the State of the Union on January 20th, 2015, this past year. I am grateful for the memories of her greeting President Obama that night, and I'm so blessed that to not only have called her my constituent, but a beloved mentor and friend. As she is remembered, and she reminds us every day by her life, there's still much work to be done. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to remember the shining legacy of yet another giant figure in the fight for civil and human rights, Mr. Julian Bond. This courageous voice held several titles over the course of his impactful life, but he is most remembered for his service as the NAACP chairman and the co-founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He was also one of the original leaders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, while he was a student at Morehouse College. He later served in the Georgia General Assembly for more than 20 years. He was first elected to the Georgia House of Representatives in 1965. However, because of his longstanding legacy of fighting white supremacy, white state House members in Georgia tried unsuccessfully to block him from taking his seat. This brave spirit was undeterred. He spearheaded efforts to draft landmark legislation that spoke to the needs of blacks in the state of Georgia. In addition to his time as an eloquent speaker, Julian Bond was also a celebrated writer, poet, television commentator, community advocate, as well as a communication specialist. He did so much for the Southern Poverty Law Center that set it on its course, and he did so much for the lives of so many. All three of these wonderful giants tell a story of how ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And working collectively, we as a nation can achieve amazing heights, even if we don't think so. As Congressman Rangel's story best exemplified, if we just take one step, hopefully the Lord will give us the strength to take many, many more towards that fight for justice and equality. And in closing, I am reminded of what Amelia Boynton would often say when I and others would come up to her and say, "We stand on your shoulders, we stand on your shoulders." Well, Miss Amelia Boynton was so infamously known for saying, hearing it over and over again, "Get off my shoulders. There's plenty of work to be done. Do your own work," is what she said. And so I say to my colleagues gathered here tonight and the colleagues in this wonderful body called the House of Representatives, we have plenty of work to do. We have plenty of work to do. And while we walk in the footsteps of giants such as Amelia Boynton and Louis Stokes and Julian Bond, let us never forget that they too had to take a first step. And as we follow in their footsteps, let us all take many steps towards providing justice and liberty for all Americans, especially those that are most vulnerable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.